Om Ajnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Dhena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiraye. We're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th Canto, Chapter 22, Elements of Material Creation. And today's verse is number 39. Vishaya biniveshena Natmanam yat smarit punaha Jantor vai kasya chiddetor Mrityur atyanta vismrita Mrityur atyanta vismritihi Vishaya biniveshena Natmanam yat smarit punah Jantor vai kasya chiddetor Mrityur atyanta vismritihi. Vishaya in new objects of perception. Abhiniveshena because of absorption. Not. Atmanam his previous self. Yet the situation in which Smaret remembers Punaha anymore Janto of the living entity Vai indeed Kaschachit Heto for any reason or other Mrityu known as death Atyanta total Vismriti forgetfulness. Translation: when the living entity passes from the present body to the next body, which is created by his own karma, he becomes absorbed in the pleasurable and painful sensations of the new body and completely forgets the experience of the previous body. This total forgetfulness of one's previous material identity, which comes about for one reason or another, is called death. Please repeat. When the living entity passes from the present body to the next body, which is created by his own karma, he becomes absorbed in the pleasurable and painful sensations of the new body and completely forgets the experiences of the previous body. This total forgetfulness of one's previous material identity, which comes about for one reason or another, is called death. Purport by the servants of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Servants of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki. Depending on one's karma or fruitive activities, one may achieve a beautiful, wealthy, or powerful body, or be degraded to an abominable condition of life. Taking birth in heaven or in hell, the living entity learns to completely identify his ego with the new body, and thus becomes absorbed in the pleasure, fear, opulence, or suffering of the new body, completely forgetting the experiences of the previous body. Death occurs when the specific karma allotted to a physical body is finished. Since that particular body's karma is used up, it can no longer act upon one's mind. In that way, one forgets the previous body. The new body is created by nature so that one can experience the karma currently in effect. Consequently, one's entire consciousness becomes absorbed in one's current body in order that one can fully experience the results of his previous activities. Because the living entity falsely identifies himself as the body, bodily death is experienced as death of the soul. Actually, however, the soul is eternal and is never subject to creation or annihilation. This analytic knowledge of self-realization is easily understood in Krishna consciousness. I'm going to read the next verse too because it's about birth. Janma tvatmataya pumsa sarva bhavena bhurida vishaya swikritim prahur yata swapna manoratha. Janma, birth, to and atmataya, by identification with oneself. Pumsa, of a person. Sarvabhavena, completely. Purita, O most charitable Uddhava. Vishaya, of the body. Swikritim, the acceptance. Prahu is called Yata, just as. Swapna, a dream. Manarata, or a mental fantasy. O most charitable Uddhava, what is called birth is simply a person's total identification with a new body. One accepts the new body just as one completely accepts the experience of a dream or a fantasy as reality. Please repeat. O most charitable Uddhava, what is called birth is simply a person's total identification with a new body. One accepts the new body just as one completely accepts the experience of a dream or a fantasy as reality. Purport. Identification with one's material body surpasses the mere affection and attachment one feels for the bodies of relatives or friends. The word sarvabhavena here shows that one totally accepts the material body to be oneself, just as one completely accepts the experience of a dream as real. Mere imagination without practical action is called a daydream. The mental concoction that occurs in a sleeping state is called a dream. Our identification with our own body and our blind acceptance of bodily relationships as permanent constitute a prolonged form of dreaming or fantasy in which one imagines oneself to be separate from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The term birth, therefore, does not refer to the generation of a new entity, but to the blind acceptance of the spirit soul as a new material body. So here, as being described in two verses, what is birth and death. It's very helpful to know this because there's a mystery around the idea of birth and death. In fact, in the Gita, Krishna says, Yatanto yoginas chainam pashnantyatmanyavastitam yatanto prakritatmano nainam pashyantya chetasaha. That people who are not trained in this knowledge can't see what's happening when someone dies or someone's being born. Then Krishna says if somebody's eyes are trained in knowledge, then he or she can understand what's actually taking place. So here the very simple details of what is birth and what is death are described. So the first section of 39 says, Vishaya abhiniveshita. So, biniveshita na. So the senses are naturally embedded in their objects. This is something mentioned by the Hamsa avatar in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Hamsa appears and has a conversation with some of the sages. And he describes how as soon as one is born in this world, one is inextricably connected with the objects of the senses. And the reason is that our senses, which have a subtle element and a gross element, behind the gross instrument is a subtle sense. And those subtle senses are embedded in the sense objects. That's why you have a natural way of being attracted to certain kinds of sense objects, through the eyes, through the nose, the ears, and so forth. And that happens to be because of previous conditioning. Krishna says, Shotram chakshu sparshanam cha rasanam grananeva cha atishtayam manaschayam vishayan upasevate. I'll say that again. Shotram chakshu sparshanam cha rasanam grananeva cha atishtayam manaschayam vishayan upasevate. That a person receives a particular set of senses because of the mode of nature, or the combination and permutations of modes of nature that one's acquired in the previous life. And these senses are attracted to particular sense objects. Therefore, a cat is attracted to a mouse. I'm not so much attracted. But cats, you watch them, and when they see a mouse, or even a picture of a mouse, they go nuts. But I'm not interested so much, because my senses aren't specifically embedded in that sense object, because they're conditioned by different modes of nature. And the natural attraction that takes place and the absorption thereafter is called abhiniveshata. And this is what Krishna says is the natural state of a conditioned being, is to be absorbed in the sense objects. Bhayam tvitya abhiniveshatasya ishad apetasya viparya yosmiti. The material existence is characterized by fear because of one's absorption in the material sense objects. And one forgets then about one's soul and one's relationship with Krishna. So this verse describes death. So here we go. Vishaya abhiniveshata abhiniveshena. Na atmanam, he's not aware, na atmanam, his previous self and the situation that he was in. So he doesn't remember. Of course, some people remember. There are cases where children, these are documented, University of Virginia, there's a lot of empiric research that's been done about children that remember their previous lives. And now a common question is, if karma is meant for my reformation, and I don't remember what I did in my last life, then what good is it that I don't remember? First of all, it's Krishna's arrangement, because I don't want to know what I did. I want to live my life now, and I don't want to be reminded. So Krishna's very merciful, and he doesn't remind us of everything we did in our last life. Otherwise, we would be not just completely confused, we would be horrified. Remembering that previous experiences is too much to fathom. I would rather be compartmentalized in my present life and try to focus on my own sense gratification right now. However, there are ways of remembering that don't mean that one remembers a specific incident. I talked to Vishnu Gadar Prabhu, who's a psychologist, and he said there are at least 7 separate types of memory that psychologists recognize. And some of them have to do with emotional memory. There's a way in which the experiences we have in this world are emotionally recounted on the heart level. For instance, some people are naturally afraid of certain kinds of circumstances in this world. They have phobias and so forth. It's an emotional response to a particular situation. And they're emotionally inclined in various ways. This represents a kind of memory from the previous life. that is not remembering a specific incident, but an absorbed memory that one has through emotion, or absorbed emotion one has that comes out as a memory. So then he says, Jantur vai kashyachit detur mrityur atyanti vismritihi. So again, the living entity, for one reason or another, this is kashyachit heto. The reason is like whatever it is. It's the living entity is called tatasta, which means he's neither here nor there. He can be anywhere. So it's not, the Shastra doesn't go into minute detail about how he got here or there. He just said, look, I mean, souls are everywhere. They can go anywhere they want because that's their nature. They're spiritual, but they can't end up in the material atmosphere because of their particular will at any time. And it's not so significant. I mean, the result is significant, but the fact is that the living entity has volition and therefore can choose and focus on one thing or another and then end up there. And Krishna points this out in the Bhagavad Gita when he says, Yanti deva prata devan pitran yanti pratirvata bhutani yanti bhuteja yanti mam yajinopi mam. That means you can go wherever you like, little jiva. You're free to move about the universe. Just focus on a particular place and put your attention there, and where attention goes, energy flows. You'll go there. And this is part of the science of Bhagavad Gita, that you have free choice. And if you'd like to stay in the material nature, you'll be in a disadvantageous situation, but you can elevate yourself by the science of Bhagavad Gita. So the person who's in material nature for one reason or another then comes to forget his previous mother, father, the book collection he had, the likes and dislikes he had, all the little to-do list he had. He forgets all that. The kind of car, what color it was. It's just kind of wiped out. Like an exo-sketch. You just like shake it up and it's like gone. And so he forgets that, and then in his next life, when he transmigrates to a new body which is based on daivanetrena, there's a choice made by higher authorities. Have you ever had that done for you? I'm not talking about death, I'm talking about some higher authority made a choice and said, you go in that line. And you're like, but, and they said, no, get in the line. That's where you're going. That's the choice that's made from a higher vantage point. There are those with more subtle intelligence and who have a higher perspective of where we are, what we've done, and therefore we're accommodated by material nature based on this daivanetrena. Karmana daivanetrena jantor deho papate the striya pravishta udaram pumso reta kanashraya. This is described by Kapiladev, who says that at the time of conception there's a very orchestrated and deliberate arrangement made for every little soul, which kind of womb that soul is placed into based on his activities and karma and his consciousness at the time of death. And it's perfectly arranged for somebody's. So if you want to know why you've got in the body you've got, it's because of that, because of your previous activities and engagements in the material world. So now I've forgotten everything because I'm being transferred to a new situation, and as soon as I become aware of the new situation, this is what the verse about birth says, Janma tvatmataya pungsa sarva bhavena bhurida. So janma, birth, to and mataya, by identification with oneself, pumsa, of a person, sarva bhavena bhurida. So he's saying, as soon as you become aware of the next situation and you identify with it, then vishaya swikritim prahur, vishaya of the next body, which means the body's made of senses, swikritim, and you accept it. Now I accept the next body. So, you can go to sleep as a man and wake up as a dog, Prabhupada said. This is what death is like. You go to sleep is one thing, and wake up is like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And And then he's like, hey, whatever, I'm a dog. And then prahu, this is called prahu, yata, swapna, just as in a dream, manarata, a mental fantasy. So this idea of birth, it just all of a sudden now I'm refocused on a new situation, new life situation, which includes the body I just got. Free gift from material nature. And now I identify with it and abhiniveshita, I become absorbed in it again. And I think this is me, and I have to learn to get potty trained again. I'm going through the whole thing and I'm thinking, this is me. And this is my life, these are my parents, this is my job, this is the kind of music I like, this is my country, and this is my football team, this is the kind of food I eat. That's how I roll. And this is called birth. And when one becomes aware of this. So this is demystified in the Shastras. Most people don't know what birth and death is. And that's a problem. Because if you have no idea how you got here, or where you're going, or what the circumstances of it are, you can't really extricate yourself. So Krishna goes to great lengths in the Bhagavad Gita to explain this science. He says that because of our varied states of consciousness, which we can adjust as human beings, we have the opportunity to adjust our state of consciousness by our association. We can elevate ourselves. So he mentions that this is association with various modes of material nature, adho gachanti tamasa. If you associate with the lower modes, you're pulled down into a really bad situation. If you associate with sattva gun, then you'll be situated in a sattva gun situation in your next life. And if you act transcendentally, you engage in devotional service, perform devotional activities, then you'll rise above the modes. Mamchayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatitjaitam brahma bhuya kalpate. You'll rise above the three modes of material nature and you'll get a spiritual body in your next life. And you'll take birth in a situation where you can associate with those who are doing full-time service, and you can, somewhere in the material universe, you'll get a birth in a family that's engaged in one of Krishna's pastimes. And then you get trained up, and then in your next life or subsequent lives, you can be transferred to the spiritual world, in a nutshell. So those are a few thoughts about birth and death. What do you think? The verses are amazing, aren't they? If any ordinary person reads this, they'll be startled to know that there's such clear information given in 2 verses about what is birth and what is death, because it's a whole mystery. People avoid talking about the subject because they're embarrassed. They have no idea what it is. When I was a kid, I used to ask all the time, why do I have to die? And by the way, what is death anyway? And no one around me in my family could answer me. And that really ticked me off. So, that's one of the impetuses I had for joining the Hare Krishna movement. It said, everyone has to die. Why can't somebody answer this question? Little did I know it was sitting right there in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So now we'll take some reflections or questions. We'll start with His Holiness Bhakti Marg Swami, as usual.
Well, I always thought it was what Srila Prabhupada was explaining.
Srila Prabhupada was explaining.
Very simply
that. Dying
means going to sleep.
Dying means going to sleep.
And then when you wake up, you're just in a new.
Then when you wake up, you're in a new
tabernacle.
New tabernacle.
It's just a new experience.
New experience.
But what I always thought was interesting is that
you always found interesting.
People have had new body.
And they have their new body.
You have seemingly new experiences.
You have seemingly new experiences.
And you're just trying everything out, all the vishaya, all the sense objects.
And you're trying out all the vishaya sense objects.
And trying to connect them with the senses.
And trying to connect them with the senses.
Thinking that it's new and it's fresh.
Thinking that it's new and fresh.
But actually, it's forgotten.
But actually, it's a forgotten notion.
that we have experienced these things before.
That we've experienced these things before.
No matter whether it's eating, sleeping, mating, defending, and all the different
Whether it's eating, sleeping, mating, or defending, or the various varieties of those various activities.
So it's just kind of my observation. It's astounding to me.
My observation is, and it's astounding to me that we're always
looking for something new.
looking for something new, but it's old.
It's like getting a newspaper.
It's like getting a newspaper.
We're looking at the news because nobody gets newspapers anymore.
We're looking at the news. Nobody gets newspapers anymore. They call it news.
But it's actually olds.
It's olds, and that's not news.
It's just the same old thing, regurgitated again.
Same old thing, regurgitated
So I'm
again
just
and again.
fascinated by that.
He's fascinated by that.
People are just, they want to resist to surrender. And they're like, no, there's something else I have to try. I have to try this.
They resist surrender because they think there's something else to try.
So it's the fascination that exists in the world that keeps us here.
It's the fascination with the world that keeps us here.
We have to change our fascination.
We have to change our fascination.
From a material one to a spiritual one.
From a material something to a material.
From a material to spiritual.
From material to spiritual. Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you. Other reflections or questions to expand the topic? Yes. Miracle.
Reading both of these verses.
Reading both of these verses.
I've been at a lot of births.
I've been in a lot of births.
Well, I have been in a lot of births.
Well, I have been in a lot of births. I've witnessed a lot of births in this life.
And I've also been at some deaths.
I've also been at some deaths.
And it kind of surprised me that it felt the same.
It felt the same.
Yeah, when someone's coming into the world and
when someone's coming into the world, someone's leaving, it feels the same to her.
Yeah, well, as an observer.
As an observer.
Similarities.
The similarity between the two. Yeah, because really exiting one body and going to the next. Samsara means from one to the next. It's flowing from one body to the next. In fact, you're developing your new body even as you're leaving the other one, and it's being arranged for you, so it's a seamless transfer. Unless there's some kind of anomaly, in which case you can end up without a physical body for some time, which is extremely torturous because there's no way to fulfill those particular desires. But if you take it back a step, even in being in a physical body is a extremely frustrating situation because we're not actually enjoying the sense objects. We're enjoying the idea of enjoying the sense objects. The enjoyment takes place really in the mind, and the result is misery. Yehi sansparshaja bhoga dukkha yonaya evate adyantavanta konteya nate shuramate buddha. Krishna says in the Gita that this idea of enjoying the vishaya, the sense objects, is actually a source of misery because we're forever frustrated by the situation. And there's a reaction that we get from getting attached to the sense objects, because then there's separation afterwards. Other thoughts, reflections, questions? Yes, 1, 2. Oh, we've forgotten our Haridev Prabhu. Sorry about that.
Maharaj, what happens to the intelligence? Like, the senses we forget the experiences from the previous bodies. So, how does the intelligence become re-established?
That's mentioned in Bhagavatam. Asau gunam, of course in Gita, sarvasya chaham rajasanavishto mattak smitir jnanam aponam cha. Krishna is there to remind us what kinds of things we are predisposed to, and he helps to reestablish the particular predilection we have for certain kinds of things. And also, it's part of our karma that's carried over. The intelligence we get in our next life and so forth is determined because of our pious or impious activities in the last life. But Prabhupada described it in one place as being the chitta, which is really like a combination of the mind and the intelligence together, which are described as two separate entities. One's more subtle than the other. But the vrittis, or the experiences that we take in through our indriyas, through our senses during a particular lifetime, get absorbed into that subtle body. And they reside there. And therefore, from previous lives, and Prabhupada mentions this in the Upadeshamrita, in the Bhagavad Gita, that even images, particular vrittis, impressions from previous lives will pop up in this life and surprise us. So he says, at the end of life, one may then have an incongruous thought that comes up, floats up from before, because it's in there. And so, asau gurumayir bhaver bhuta sukshmendriyatmabi swan nirmiteshu nirvishto bhukte bhuteshu tadguna. The Lord enters into the heart of the living being and reminds him of his previous desires. And that's because of the super soul and because of our exposure to particular modes of nature and ideas and thoughts that go into the subtle body. Some people, just when they're born, you see children who exhibit a certain kind of intelligence toward an activity that they haven't really been trained in. Some kids, just sit down at the piano and start playing Mozart, because it's there to a degree already in their subtle body, carried over from previous lives. Kind of intelligence. Yeah. Hare Krishna.
I just wanted to find out that in the Hindu religion, they do Shraddha for 13 days.
We wanted to find out if from the Hindu religion there's Shraddha in 13 days.
And they say after 13 days,
After 13 days, the new
one
body.
gets the new body. So
Gets the
how
new body.
Bhagavatam is related to this one?
How's the Bhagavatam related to this one?
one?
Well, I mean, you kind of answered your own question. That the idea is that there's a kind of interim period. It's actually a big deal when somebody leaves their body. I mean, even from the physical side, if you're hanging around when they leave and you have anything to do, any connection with them, you'll find out, it takes months, years, even for an ordinary person to finish all the paperwork. Like, when my parents died, luckily I didn't have to do it. My sister was the eldest, and she became the what do you call? The trustee? Executor of her will. And so, but she worked on it for years. Where everything went, where all the properties would go, everything had to be signed off. There was, credits to be taken in, there was taxes, some to be paid. And so there's this residual effect when a living entity comes into the world or leaves it, leaves behind on the physical level all kinds of details to be taken care of, loose ends to be tied up, and similarly on a subtle level too, when someone leaves the body. There's also a lot of details to be dealt with. And so there's a period of time during which the kinds of purificatory activities that take place around that particular soul can be beneficial. And these are in the Shastra, describing a particular time period during which all this is going on, and one can do great benefit for the person by offering pinda. In fact, that takes place on a regular basis, even after the person leaves the body. That's why a son is called putra, because tra means to deliver and put means hell. So a son is supposed to deliver the father from hell by performing sacrifice after the father dies. There are particular rituals to perform. And there's a connection when one does the right sacrifice to that departed soul to help pull him out of hell and give him some kind of elevation. So we do in simplified forms. The Vaishnava rituals have to do with having a kirtan and a feast. You offer the prasadam to Krishna, you offer the bhoga to Krishna, and then you take the prasadam and you offer it to a picture of the deceased person. And then you have a big kirtan and some memorial. And this gives some benefit, purification to the person who left their body. Helps tie up the loose ends. Maharaj.
Do you remember anything from
Do I remember
previous
anything
life?
from previous life? Do I remember right now?
Well, what times does it?
Well, not exactly, but I was telling the devotees the other day that when I went for my Nexus card at Niagara Falls, they did all this background check on us. And Nexus and a global entry makes it a lot easier to come in and out of the countries. And so we were almost at the end of the process, and they called me into a little room and they said, Mr. Suchek, have you ever been arrested? Now that's quite a question to ask a Sankirtan devotee from the 70s. I'm like going, all of a sudden it came into my mind like, God, how many times have I been arrested? And my answer was, probably. Couldn't think of anything else to say. They said, be more specific. And I said, Chicago? Because I knew I remember definitely getting arrested in Chicago. And they said, yeah, you're going to have to, there was something left open. And they said, you have to clear that from your record. So I had to go back and actually call the Chicago Police Department. They had it on my record from 1975. I'm not going to go into the details. It definitely wasn't my fault. It had nothing to do with me, but it was just, I was implicated and Krishna was purifying. And the case somehow or other wasn't closed, even though it was supposedly adjudicated at the time. And so I had this otherworldly experience when the official brought that up. Because all of a sudden my mind went rushing back to 1975 and I thought, oh, there was some implication there. And it's still there on my record, amazingly. Even though I completely forgot. I don't walk around thinking I got arrested in Chicago. But I was. I'm happy to say, actually. I'm proud of the fact. And so that's kind of an experience I had of a last life in this life. And, it's Dehinos Minyata Dehe. It was a different era, a different body. And I can extrapolate from that. And in fact, I did. I had this experience, like, how many things did I do in my last lives that I don't even remember? And then, something bad happens, a reversal, and that's your karma. It's like, why should I have that? I didn't do anything. It's like, you just forgot. But you've been mixing it up with material nature since the time immemorial. They say, why does it, Dhritarashtra wanted to know, why do my 100 sons killed? And Krishna said, it's your karma. He said, what karma? Tell me. He said, many lifetimes ago, you killed 100 baby birds and devastated the whole family. So you had to pay for it. He said, why do you have to wait for so many lives in order to pay for it? He said, you had to have at least that many births, so you had a birth in which you had 100 sons all at the same time. So the karma is, that comes to one, is being arranged perfectly through the material nature, but I may not understand the different combinations and permutations of activities and the decisions that have to be made, because it's on a very subtle level. Do you remember previous lives?
Well, it just happened in a dream when I was a kid, and I was dreaming that Nazis were marching. They're coming towards where I was sleeping, and I was just scared. I thought that it was just an impression maybe absorbed from watching one of those old documentaries from the Second World War or something like that. Or I just felt, because my dad used to tell us stories about the Second World War and the hell of it all. But anyways, it left an impression that, I was scared when you hear those sirens from the Second World War. Maybe I was some Jewish person trapped up somewhere, trying to not be caught.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's happened to me.
Sure. Yeah. So also, okay, last question.
Thank you. So, Prabhu, I had this question. All these problems, all these miseries, I was just wondering, is the answer Param Drishva Nivartate to all of this tabernacle by engaging in higher taste?
Answer to all, what kind of problems?
Like birth, death, all the miseries in between, that my consciousness is in sense objects, and to remove all that and to get free from all that is the answer, Param Drishva Nivartate?
Yeah, to some degree you could say that. The main driving force, or what's creating my environment and my future, is the state of my consciousness. So when I leave the body, whatever kind of consciousness I've developed throughout this lifetime. Oh, sorry, I didn't repeat the question. He asked if Param Drishva Nivartate, getting a higher taste, is the solution to all problems. And I was saying that, yeah, in a sense, yes, because it's the development of our consciousness that determines our situation in the next life. So if you get a higher taste for Krishna consciousness, then Krishna says in the Gita, Yang Yang Vapi Smaran Bhavam Tajat Yante Kalevaram Tam Tam Evaiti Konteya Sadatad Bhava Bhavita. Whatever prominent state of consciousness you're in when you leave the body will determine your next destination. So if you have a higher taste, it means you actually have love for Krishna, then Krishna will give you a situation where you can continue your service. And if you can't do enough service in this life, because you're so absorbed in service, but then you think, how can I do more? Then Krishna will cater to that desire and give you a spiritual body, because how else are you going to increase your service and do 24 hours a day unless you have a spiritual body? Doesn't it bug you sometimes? Your body slows you down? You can't do more service? Well, that's good, because if you have that feeling, Krishna will fulfill your desire and give you a spiritual body. Yes? She's wondering. You can, when you get that mic, take full advantage and keep it right by your chin, because everyone can hear, except for the people online. That's why I have to repeat. Go ahead.
They say how the womb affects us. It's really traumatic.
What does?
The womb, being in the womb of another.
The womb is, who says?
People have told me.
People have said being in the womb is very traumatic.
For the rest of your life. So in
It's
what
very-
ways does it affect you? And I don't know, some people are telling me that it affects other people more than some.
I don't know about who these other people are, what they're saying, but I'll tell you the kinds of information that we get from the Bhagavatam about being in the womb. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also recounted this information to his mother when he was in the mood of preaching from a perspective of being an avatar. So Kapiladev, in the third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, in talking about the movements of material nature, says that the living entity who's fortunate and is in the womb becomes acutely aware of his situation. And he sees actually that I'm transmigrating from one body to the next. And now I'm trapped in another womb. There's a romantic notion excuse me, that I heard about growing up. It's more than romantic. It has to do with certain branches of psychology who say that actually we feel very comfortable in the womb. And that we're always thinking, how can I go back into the womb and be sheltered and so forth. But the Bhagavatam has a different version. And that is, the womb is very constricted. And when we realize that actually we're in there, and that we've been compelled into a particular womb, and become aware of our existential situation, that is, I've been forced into this situation. Now the living entity remembers from the womb, first of all has this lucidity that I'm not the body, I'm stuck in a womb, and also knows that as soon as I get pushed out, I'm going to forget again. That's why in the song we hear Jeev Jago, Gora Chandra Bole, Kotan Nidra, Jao Maya, Pisachila. What's the next line? Vajiba Bolia Eshe Shanshara Bitare, Bhuliaro Hile Tumi, Abhijara Bhare. He's saying in this song, he's reminding the souls, remember, you were the womb. And you said, when I get out of here, I'm going to serve you, Krishna. You ever been in hot water? Not in like a shower, but I'm just like in trouble. And then you think all of a sudden, if I get out of this, I'll be good forever. Just let me out of this one situation and I'll always be good from now on. Just don't let this happen. So the soul's like that, but very intensely in the womb, thinking, oh, Krishna, not again. But Kapila Dev describes how it's a traumatic experience moving from the womb out into the world. And the reason I explained at the very beginning of the talk is because the senses then become externalized. When they're in the womb, they're not fully manifest. They're more in their subtle manifestation. But when they come out, the senses become embedded in their sense objects. And then you're completely connected to them, you just forget. With the new experience, the new environment, and new parents looking down at you, or whatever situation you're in, you become fully absorbed in that. And then the false ego comes up again and you think, this is me. This is my new life. So the soul in the womb knows that. And the main suffering is this mental anguish that I'll never get out of this. So he's praying in the womb. The ones that are fortunate, they pray in the womb and they have that kind of clarity that I'm suffering here. I don't know if that's parallel to what you heard, but that's the main information that's given in the Bhagavatam. Yes, Prabhu?
Hare Krishna, thank you for the class. So my question is, the living entity is eternal. So how come this population is increasing? Like if it doesn't die, soul doesn't die and taking birth. So where this new souls coming from? Like is it from other universe or?
Yeah, in fact, Mahaprabhu mentions this when he's talking to Vasudeva Datta. Vasudeva Datta is so compassionate for the suffering of the souls in this world. He prays to Lord Chaitanya, you please give me all the karma of every living entity, and I'll stay in the material world and suffer eternally on their behalf, and let them all go back to Godhead and clear the whole universe. And then Mahaprabhu says, yes, by your desire they'll all be delivered. Then he says, but then the universe will be refilled with living entities immediately. Because the living entities are called asankhya. They're uncountable. It means there's unlimited souls. It's not like a finite number where you go like, okay, that's it. They're all back. The material world's eternal. It's just manifested in intervals because there's always a portion of souls who will gravitate towards the material energy. And then are in this cycle until somebody extricates them. There's some kind of intervention and then they're reawakened to their spiritual consciousness. You're welcome. And because this is our last class, because tomorrow morning we're leaving at 4:30 a.m. So just if there's any reflections from over the weekend or any questions from anything, we have a couple more minutes. Anything that you wanted to rehash? Yes?
Well, one thing I just remembered from yesterday's class was the kind of association we have now is going to determine where we will be in the next few years.
Yeah. That's true, and I quoted the verse, Purusha prakritisto hi bhunte prakriti jangunan karanam guna sangosya sarasad yoni janmasu. Krishna says, whatever good or bad you have is caused by your previous association. So whomever you're associating with now, you're acquiring their modes of nature by association. We're very porous. both physically and our mental system is open. And whether we like it or not, we take on the qualities of those that we're around. And therefore the bulk of the instructions around Krishna consciousness have to do with Sangha. Whoever you're associating with, you're going to become like. So that's good news for some people. And for others, it's really bad news. So don't open your heart to those who are not sincere about practicing Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada says, your association with them is official. So they say this, that, and you go, yes sir, very good sir. But you don't open your heart to them. You're just like, okay, I just am dealing with you because I have to. But when it comes to identifying those who are actually sincere and advanced in Krishna consciousness, the more you can get that association and the more you can open your heart and listen, submissive hearing, the more you advance in Krishna consciousness, because you take on that quality of the devotee by hearing and associating and serving. Then you naturally advance in Krishna consciousness. Thank you. 1, 2. Krishna Krishna, Hari Hari.
Thank you, Maharaj. So one follow-up question came to my mind.
He has a follow-up question.
So Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that
Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita,
once we go back to Godhead, we will not come back.
We will not come back.
My question is, when we go back, is there a possibility of the desire coming back to us that we want to enjoy?
Is there a possibility of desire coming back to us?
That we want to enjoy separate from Krishna again?
That we want to enjoy separate from Krishna again?
And if that happens, will we be put back to the material world?
If that happens, will we be put back in the material world?
Thank you.
Thank you. Once burnt, twice shy, and not very likely. Who else?
I have a couple of reflections I wanted to share.
Okay.
So the first one that I really like is that we have to prepare our lives to receive the mercy of Krishna.
We have to prepare our lives to receive the mercy of Krishna.
Another thing that I'm going to take away is there are a lot of things to get that you need to get done.
There's a lot of things you need to get done.
But it's important to focus on what's the next little thing that.
But it's important to focus on the next little thing that I have to do. Yeah, what's the next step? May be so small, and if I skip over that step, then I can get tied up and procrastinate because I'm thinking it's too big, I can't do it. So back up one more step and do what you can right now, the smallest step that you can take right now that leads you, because everything's comprised of a number of tiny little steps, just like when you do algebra. Algebra is not hard. It's just that you have to know what step to do next. And if you know that, then you just go through the system, right? So same thing with our lives. We have to find out what's the next step I have to do. And take that next step. And also, just because you can't do everything doesn't mean that you can't do something. So it's always better to do what you can with what you have rather than procrastinating because you can't do everything that you want to do. Thank you.
Yes, Prabhu, I had this question yesterday about reading the Shastra.
You had a question yesterday about reading the Shastra.
So the real purports.
So the real purports.
Imported when I serve the devotees or the senior devotees.
I'll understand the real purports when I serve the senior devotees.
Or simply reading won't help me.
Or simply reading won't help me. Which is a question I think he's asking.
Yeah, and I think I heard that in a lecture.
And I think I heard it in a lecture. Well, we read the verse today in the preamble, Shushu Shoshodatanasya Vasudeva Kataruchi, Syan Mahat Seveya Vipra Punya Tirtha Nishevana. By serving great souls, one develops a taste for hearing. And hearing is a service also. Because when you read Shastra, when you hear, it's a way of serving through the process of giving your attention to the Shastra. So that's also service. But it's augmented when you do service for the great souls. if, for instance, you take the process of Krishna consciousness, but you isolate yourself from devotees, or you don't submit to those who are the living Bhagavatam. For instance, as mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's the Bhagavatam and there's the person Bhagavatam. So both are important in one's advancement in devotional service. We should serve both by hearing Bhagavatam and also serve those who have imbibed the Bhagavatam and are living it. You get the full benefit that way.
So Prabhu, skipping service and going to read is not a very good policy.
Keeping service? Skipping service?
In a diplomatic way.
Well, why would you do that?
Because I want the nectar. Because it's so nice to read. So I want to, in a good way, I'll politely decline the service.
So you'll have to find a place to hide then. So you have to do that sometimes. I mean, when I met Prabhupada in 1973 in San Francisco, and I was with a book distribution party, and our temple president introduced us and told how many books we were distributing. Here's what Prabhupada said to me: "You must also read my books. I've not written them just for selling. I've written them so you can read them." So I used to hide sometimes too, because Prabhupada told me that. And back then, everyone just said, "Go out all day, don't come back until, forever." And I saw parties that, the devotees just went out all day long and they never came back. And I said, "The heck with that." Prabhupada told me to read the book, so I'd find a place to hide and I'd do my reading and then I'd go back out again. It didn't diminish my scores ultimately, because if you don't hear and chant, you're not going to last anyway on going out on Sankirtan. So it's a little bit short-sighted. So reading is a service, but it's nice to find out what the particular flow of the temple is and try to harmonize with that. Devotees who hide all the time sometimes aren't appreciated as much. You got to show up. It's better to be preemptive. Show up and do a lot of service that nobody else wanted to do. Then you'll earn the right to go and hide for a little while. You can sneak out at night, sweep all the floors, mop everything, clean the toilets. Then you can go back and read Bhagavatam all you want. Okay.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Any last question or comment? We've taken everything from the well. It's completely dry. So this is a sacred place. Of course, the temple and this hearing of Bhagavatam on a daily basis is the very means of conquest. So try to read the whole Bhagavatam at least every 2 years, or at least every 5 years. It means you have to get on a schedule. And if you do that, then it'll fortify you in your practice of devotional service. And if you can, get together with devotees on a regular basis and try to have at least once a week a super focused japa. It'll carry you the rest of the week. And take books with you wherever you go and pass them out. Om Tat Sat. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Gaur Premanande, Nitai Gaura Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gaura Hari Bo, Nitai Gaura Hari Bo, Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gaura Hari Bo. Vanchakalparusha Kripasinabheva Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namo Anantakoti Vaishnavini ki jai.
Srila Prabhupada Armarman, Natari Armarman, Natari Armarman, Natari Armarman, hey, Natari Armarman, Natari Armarman, Natari Armarman, Natari Armarman.